There are four different types of slopes. So the first of which right here is when you are traveling from left to right, then you can see that the penguin is ascending upwards. So whenever that is occurring, we have a line that has a positive slope. But if from left to right we're decreasing in elevation over time, then that's going to be a slope that is considered to be negative. And then you'll see that in the third one right here, we're maintaining a constant elevation right there. And so what we're going to end up getting right there is we're going to end up getting actually what is considered to be a zero slope. And the reason kind of why that is if we pick a couple of points on this particular line right here, you can see then that the amount of rise is actually nothing because we're not going up or down, so the rise is going to be equal to 0. But then the run would be, in this particular case, 5, and it could be anything. So if you did rise over run, 0 divided by anything is going to be 0. So you can see that the actual number that the slope is will be 0, and then we can also say that the type of that is 0. Whereas this last type of slope is going to occur whenever you have a vertical line, like as follows here. And so if we were to find the slope here, it turns out that the rise ended up being 4, but then the run is going to be nothing because you're not moving left or right or anything like that. So that means that the bottom number is always going to be a 0 when you're finding the slope for a vertical line. And whenever that happens, of course, that's not a number because when you divide by 0, like, you're not going to get anything. It's undefined. And so we actually do call this type of slope undefined whenever you have a vertical line. So now I want to take a look at being able to find the slope of a line that passes through two given points, and then also classifying the slope. So to be able to find the slope between two given points, you can just use the slope formula where you can find the change in the y and the change in the x's. And so what you'll want to do is you'll want to identify the y coordinates and then find the change in those. And so if you did 10 minus 0, that's great. 10 minus 0, but then you have to make sure that because you chose the 10 first, then you have to start with the 4 and then subtract the negative 2 from that. And so because you have a negative 2 that you're subtracting away, then you're going to end up actually adding on the bottom, of course, there. So you're going to end up with 10 over 6, and that's going to reduce down to 5/3. So that's going to be the slope of the line right there. And then also to classify the slope, it turns out that if you get a slope that is a positive number, then it's also going to be a positive slope. And so we do have a positive type of slope in that particular scenario. So what I did last time is I found the change in the y's and then the change in the x's like that sort of direction. So it does work okay that if you identify your y's, if you subtract in this direction, it's going to be a-okay. So if I did this negative 1 right here minus this negative 1 right here, then you just have to make sure that you start with this x then, since I started with the y from that first point, and then subtract away the other x. So I have negative 3 minus positive 2 there. So then you're actually going to get a 0 there and then a negative 5. But then since 0 is on top, of course, that's going to equal 0. So that right there is going to be the slope of the line. And then to classify that type of a slope, it's a 0 slope whenever you get a slope that is the number 0. And so that makes sense because if you were to actually like plot those points, negative 3, negative 1 would be kind of right there, and 2, negative 1 would be right there. So of course your line is just going to be a flat horizontal line. And then for this example right here, so the slope is going to turn out to be 7 minus 1, and then x minus x would be negative 6 minus negative 4. And so what we would get out of that then is 6 over negative 2, and that divides to give you a nice integer of negative 3. So whenever you get a slope that is a negative number, then the type of slope that it would be that you can classify it as is it would be a negative type of slope. And then one last example here to find the slope here. How about let's go this direction this time. Let's do minus negative 4 for the change in the y's first. And then for the changes in the x's there, 5 minus 5 there. So we're going to end up getting 2 plus 4, which is 6, and then 5 minus 5, which is 0. So whenever you have a 0 in the denominator, that's undefined. So you don't want to say like 6 over 0 is the slope. Really, you want to say that this right here is the slope of it. The slope is undefined, and then in terms of the type of slope, the type also ends up being undefined. So this is the only kind of type of slope where you actually don't really get a number for what the slope is, which is just undefined because whenever you divide by 0, it's not a number, it's just undefined.